Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you here today. We are getting ready to do our program. I hope you had fun with this. Let me turn on a light here so I can kind of read what I'm doing. I hope you had fun hunting for the clues. These were set up to be clues that you could do if you were a beginner. And hopefully, even if you weren't a beginner, you picked up there were a few things that maybe surprised you or maybe you learned that you didn't already know. I chose George Remus because for this program, because there's a lot of interest in him because he is buried at Riverside, but he's not at Pendleton County and he's not anything to do with local history that we can prove. So we just decided that this would be a good way to talk about him and do some genealogy too. So let's get started. Let me get my program started here. We'll get the slideshow going. And there we are. Maybe. Takes it a few seconds to come up, and sometimes it's slower than other times. Okay, little talk about our escape room here. If you didn't already log on and do our answer the questions to get in, to get the key and get out of the room, this is just an overview of what you would have seen. If you haven't done it, there's still a chance for you to do that. You just simply go to our events on our Facebook page, and there is a link there that will take you to the Google form that asks all the questions we're going to go over today. You did not have to do that in order to benefit from this program, because I'm going to take you through each of the questions and show you how, show you where to find the answers. So it was set up that you were in this room and you got locked in overnight at one of George Remus's whiskey warehouses. You have to have a key to get out the alley door. And in order to get that key, you have to solve the puzzle by answering the questions that were on the form. Every question, except for one, could be found by using Family Search. You could use any site you want to find your answers, but Family Search is a free site. MyHeritage is a free site that you can use, or not MyHeritage, Heritage Quest is a free site that you can use through the library, accessing it with your library card. Another site that you could use through the library right now is Ancestry, and that is just for a limited time only that you can do that with your library card through your library. The presentation is going to stay on YouTube indefinitely, so you can access it on down the road, and if you want. And you don't, as I said already, you don't need to fill out this form in order to do it. You'll easily understand what's going on without participating by answering the form. So, George Remus, king of the bootleggers. And we're going to start with just a little brief history on George Remus. We've got some conflicting information on different websites that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about his early life, early career, bootlegging career, and of course his final years. I use the website Immigrant Entrepreneurship, and I will put that link in the description along with some other links that you might find interesting. And that's what had some conflicting information about his family compared to what you're going to find in documents. But it does offer some little known facts that kind of put flesh on those dry bones, so to speak. The picture here, I'm going to just briefly tell you what it is because I know it's probably running through your brain. It is a farm that he used in Ohio. It's called Death Valley. It was located in Westwood, but we're going to talk a little bit more about Death Valley as we go on. When George Remus and his family were immigrants, they came from Germany and they first settled in Baltimore. They then went to Milwaukee, and they spent a brief amount of time in both places, and they wound up in Chicago. George's father found work in Chicago as a lumber scorer, and I'm going to put a video down to show you what that is all about. But basically they scored logs to be made into lumber, which consisted of chopping notches every 1 to 2 feet to score the lumber. Around around 1890, well, prior to this, George went to school, and he was a good student and had spoke very fluent German, of course, because that was his parents' native tongue and his as well. But his English was also very good, and he had just a slight accent in his English, a slight German accent, that is. Around 1890, George's father, Frank, began to really suffer from rheumatism or arthritis, and he got to the point he was disabled from it. So George had to drop out of school to help support the family. He wasn't interested in unskilled or semi-skilled jobs, which were the jobs that most immigrants got. Those would be things like factory work. A little more skill set required would be like a baker, a shoemaker, a brewer, butchers. He wasn't interested in any of that. So when he was 14, he began working in a drugstore that his uncle, George Carg, owned. And in his late teens, he enrolled in the Chicago College of Pharmacy. By the age of 19, he became a pharmacist, a licensed pharmacist. The only problem was you had to be 21 to get your license. So his uncle, George, encouraged him to lie about his age. So his age is wrong on his school records there, but he was able to get his certification that way. And then at the age of 21, he purchased his uncle's business. And within 5 years of purchasing that business, he added a second pharmacy to his business. He also obtained an optometrist certification, and he was also practicing as an optometrist there for a while. He is described as a young adult being plump and meticulous about his wardrobe. He did not drink, and he didn't smoke. Along the way throughout his life, he acquired a good taste for good food, fine art, and literature. Although he was short and stout, he was willing to fight, and he knew how to use his fists, the source said. He did not like being a pharmacist, so he went to school at night to study the law. He completed a 3-year program in 18 months. In 1901, he was practicing as a trial attorney. And while practicing as a trial attorney, he earned a reputation for representing controversial and newsworthy cases. He was a defense attorney, which is really interesting here. He was a defense attorney in a nationally noted murder trial of William Cheney Ellis, who was from Cincinnati. Mr. Ellis and his wife were visiting Chicago, and in a fit of rage, he killed her while they were there. So Remus is his defense lawyer, and he used an unheard of plea, never been heard of before, called transitory insanity. And keep that in mind. That's going to kind of come back again. And he did this to keep his client from getting the death penalty. George Remus married 3 times. His first wife was Lillian Clough, Klauff. She was a customer in one of his stores, and that's how he met her. His second wife was Augusta Imogene Brown Holmes. She was a divorcee, and he met her because she worked in a deli that he typically visited. And then his last wife was Blanche Watson, and Blanche is his connection to Falmouth. At some time in her life, she was born in Falmouth, let me back that up, in 1880. Her father died in 1889. He wrote his will that year. He also applied for a veteran's pension from the Union Army. Months later, after he applied for his pension, his wife applied for her veteran's widow's benefit. So there is no 1890 census, so we're not really sure where Blanche and her mother would have been, but Blanche would have been around, 9 or 10 years old in 1890. They do show up in Covington in the 1990 census. And at that time, she was a stenographer, which if you don't know what a stenographer is, it's an occupation doesn't exist anymore. She would, her boss would call her in to take a letter, take dictation, they called it. So she would do shorthand and writing down what all he told her. It could be a letter, it could be a report, typically, something office related. And then she would go back to her desk and type it up. George and his first wife had one daughter. And in the year of 1915, his wife, Lillian, began to hear rumors about her husband having an affair with a younger woman. And this woman was Imogene Holmes. Imogene also had one daughter. In December of 1918, Remus moved in with Imogene. He and Lillian were divorced in 1919. And during his marriage to Imogene, Remus is when Remus got into the whiskey business, the illegal whiskey business. He started out by defending men in court who were in court because they had violated the Volstead Act or the 18th Amendment, which was prohibition, or both. He prided himself on trying to find loopholes in the Volstead Act and to work those. He didn't have a lot of luck getting his clients off by using those loopholes. But what he did come out of it with was just a total awe of the men who he represented. They would be fined, huge fines, and they would just pull out a wad of money, a roll of money, and just peel off however much they needed to pay their fine and put the rest of the roll back in their pocket. They still had money left over, and lots of it. And that kind of served as an inspiration to him. The Death Valley Farm was located at 2656 Queen City Avenue, and it consisted of a 2-story frame house and several old barns. The house and the barns dated back to the original owner, who was Gilbert Dater, and Gilbert Dater ran a vineyard there. At the time Remus was using the farm, it was owned by Gilbert's grandson, George. And this is where he would hide his whiskey for his bootlegging venture. When he moved to Cincinnati, and he did move to Cincinnati in 1919. And this is a picture of the tombstone for the Watson and Remus family. Belle's parents are buried here, or Blanche, I mean. Her mother was Belle Riggle, and her father, John Taylor Watson. And if you are planning to come, and we get this all the time to the library, people coming and wondering where he's buried, you can see the vault house back here, okay? The library parking lot is just beyond that back row of trees. I think if you go to about our drop box and just walk across in a straight line, you're going to come close. It is the very last, if you're coming from from our parking lot, it would be the very last row before you walk into an open field back there, if that helps anyone find it. If not, stop at the library. We can direct you. We do it all the time. So now on to the questions. There were questions that had asterisks and questions that didn't. The ones without asterisks did not have to be answered. They were just basic things to kind of give me some ideas about you and what my audience type is like. But the main thing on those, if you do go back and pull this up and do the questions, I would really like it if you would tell me how you like this program and if you have any suggestions for future programs. It's one of the things I missed by doing virtual programs rather than in person. I don't get that feedback like I used to. And I too try to create programs that I think you will enjoy and that you want to see. So I really would appreciate that. So now on to the first of the 11 questions that are on this form, so we can get out of the whiskey warehouse, right? We ask, what country was George Remus born in? And Germany is the answer. He consistently says this on the census records, every one of them. I'm always leery about census records. You know, they're nice to use in conjunction with other records, but on this one, he's very consistent. There are there is one record, and it's the 1920 census. He gives Landsberg as his residence, and that is in Germany. Find a Grave says he was in Berlin. My original question, I should say, was where was he born? And I was looking for city and country, or state and country, whatever. But because there was some conflicting information out there, I backed off of that and just went with country. But Find a Grave says Berlin. His census and his World War II draft cards say Landsberg. I looked on a map. Landsberg and Berlin are not even in the same general area. Berlin was up closer to Poland, and Landsberg is closer to the Czech border. It's south of Munich, and it's south of Nuremberg, whereas Berlin was north of both of those, and north by quite a bit. So I'm not sure where Berlin came from. I couldn't find anything to support that. But we're going to take a look right now at some of these records. I did tell you all that, whoops, there we go, that you could use any website you wanted. I used Family Search. I did check Family Search, and I did use it. But I made a tree on Ancestry, and for the purpose of this program, it's just a lot easier because of the way it's organized to use my tree to pull up these forms. If they can't be found on Family Search, I will tell you what is there as we go through this. Let's see. We want to look at, well, we'll go down here and we'll find the World War II records for you. And this is, again, going to be slow today. And we get that a couple of times sometimes before it opens up. There we are. The World War II drafts and the World War I drafts cards are also on Family Search. So, of course, he gives his name and address. And here we go, Landsberg, Germany, right there. That was listed as a town or county. And then we had a census record that also I'll show you the 1910 census because it just says Germany, and that's highlighted as well. By this time he's a lawyer, and see, he says Germany. Okay. 1920 says Landsberg, and this one is kind of interesting. I always like to look at the image. A lot gets lost in transcriptions sometimes because people can't read the writing. People couldn't write that was legibly, and so here we go. And it makes it hard. I want you to notice the year he immigrated is he says here is 1880. Here's Landsberg, place of birth, and mother tongue Germany. But when you get over here, he says Landsberg, GER, so Landsberg, Germany. So I just wanted to kind of point that out to you. And then, of course, his birthplace was on his marriage record to Imogene Brown Holmes, his second wife. And I will show you where that was. Where did he marry her? There we go. And that points me to the record. It saves me a little time hunting. and it makes up for those kind of things. Okay, and again, we can view the image. Maybe. And his is the top one. As you can see, George Remus and Augusta I.H. Brown. Germany, right here on the left side. Wife's place of birth she's in Wisconsin. So notice the names of the witnesses. Elizabeth, it looks like Dobretz. It's Dobretz, I believe. Dobretz, we'll see. And then Julia Brown. Julia Brown is Imogene's sister. I'll answer that mystery for you right now. But Elizabeth comes up later. Okay, so, and then the immigration record. Okay, and immigration record, it should have been up here. If you notice on the left side here, 1878, I've got an arrival with one source, 1880 arrival, 1881 arrival, and then 1882 arrival with a date. All of the 1881, the 1880, the 1878 were all listed on his census records. So he's all over the board as to when he came to America to live. And he actually came on June 15th, 1882. We have a New York, US arriving passenger crew list. And that was the source. You can find this on a family search, but it was hard to find. And when I went back to try and find it again, I couldn't do it. So I'm not sure how I got it the first time, but it is there. They have so many records on Family Search for passenger manifests for immigrants that it is really going to be difficult to really search those. I would not recommend browsing. I would recommend tweaking your search to try and find that, because you could browse forever. Some of the ports it listed weren't active very much, or not even at all. So you can rule those out, but there still were quite a few left. So this was the manifest. His family is listed, let's see, they're right here. Notice Franz Karg. He has a job, but I can't read it right now, and I've forgotten what it is. And then his wife, his son, George Karg, and then daughter, Louise, and that is an S, that's that double S kind of letter that shows up as a single S too. And there you see Marie Remus. She's listed here as a daughter-in-law. I went back in German records and I don't find her married to another Remus. I can do more searching. I did a kind of a cursory search, and I think that's an error. I think she is actually daughter. Should be daughter. Actually, I'm pretty sure she should be daughter. And we'll get into that. And then here is George. He was 4 years old, and he is listed as the son of Marie. Now, you may have noticed there's nothing up here at the top. So how do you know what the date is? It's not here. It's the country, where they came from, where they're going to. If they came on steerage, that's marked for some people. The numbers on the far left are the number of passengers. It's just their passenger number. There's nothing there for a date. So trust me on this one. I went all the way back to the beginning. As you can see at the very bottom down here where I've highlighted the number in blue, there are 21 pages on this particular manifest. I clicked through every one, and the answer is on the 21st one. Of course, I started at 1, right? So here we are. The SS Fithington is the name of the ship. This is the, captain of the ship, whatever his rank was. And here is the date. It's really kind of blurry, but that is June 5th, 1882. You can probably debate that could be July because you see this piece here, or you could say that it's June 15th. You see where all this black is right here. It's where it's the fold lines. If you find this on Family Search, you will see the back side of this page. That's where I verified the date. Was on Family Search and then couldn't find it again. And it is, as we said, it is June 15th. I'm sorry, that is one. I'm sorry, I thought that was just the way they did their N, but it is June the 15th. And we'll get to that. I think that question comes up later. But since we were there looking at his birthplace, we just covered it. Question 2. We've already answered it. Of course, as I said, the census records, he was all over the board on that. And so the passenger list is what you want for the exact date. The next one is, when did he become a citizen of the United States? And that's November 10, 1897. And that is found on his naturalization record. I did not find his naturalization record on Ancestry. Believe that one or not. I thought they had everything, but it may just be the way I searched. I did find it on Family Search, and we'll go over here in the gallery and let me pull it up for you so you can see his naturalization record. There was nothing on the back side of the card, and clicked one too many times. Here is the date of naturalization, November 10, 1897. I want you to pay attention to the certificate number, R64P189, and then see it says minor. I'm going to show you something else here. It is, I think this says World War I draft card. And watch it. World War I draft card asks about U.S. citizenship. And it says, citizen, were you native born or naturalized, or were you made a citizen on your, by the time when your father became naturalized, even if you were a minor? And that is his check. So meaning he was a minor in 1897 when he became a citizen, and he became a citizen because that's the day his father became a citizen. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And if you have someone you really like his father, you maybe couldn't find a record for, that would be a good source. And then 4 and 5. This one was just kind of a fun one, I thought. Did George Remus own a radio, and how do you know? That's questions 4 and 5. It is on the 1930 census. And let me get my papers caught up a little bit here. We're going to look at those, the 1930 census for you. And I will show you where on that census that you can find it. The census records are really kind of neat in that some years they ask supplemental questions and you can learn a little bit extra about your ancestor. For example, the 1890 census was lost in a fire, but the veteran schedule survived the fire. And if your ancestor had rheumatism or scurvy or anything that caused him to be disabled, that's on the supplemental. So you can find out a little bit about their health or disability. There are other questions that are asked. So for the issue of the radio, it's in home data. See up here, home data. It asks if you own or rent your home. So he owned it. It was worth $45,000. which was a pretty nice home, I'd say, in 1930. Radio set. The R means they had a radio. And it looks like most of his neighbors, if you go on down, have a radio. The heads of household will have a radio beside their names. And you can notice that. So that was, I thought was kind of an interesting question to ask. And then of course, did the family live on a farm? That's a typical home data kind of question. And then I'll just scroll across here and let you look at some of the other information that he gave. And he marks that he's not naturalized. So does his housekeeper. And we'll take a look at, we'll come back to this census later. Okay, I then ask for question 6, what was George's mother's first name and her maiden name? I thought this was pretty straightforward. And then I got to looking and her name is just tortured. So this was a bad question. I apologize. Marie Karg is actually her name. I know this because I can go back in German records. But they're not always free. So I pretty much accepted whatever I think I did change it to accept. There was only one and it was way off. And so I did accept 2, Karg and Krag, K-R-A-G, were the 2 that I accepted because those are the 2 you see on American records. You can find this on George's death certificate. And then there are various newspaper articles concerning him that she's mentioned in. So we're going to take a look-see at those. I didn't do this before I left. There. Marie. And this is her, I've used this as her profile picture, but it did come from a newspaper clipping. Mrs. Marie Remus, the mother who believes in him, is the subheading there. So that did come out of a paper, and this was from one of his trials. Let me see. Let's go back to George. It's easier to find his death record because on him. And I click on that just so that it takes me to it. We have a death index and we have the death records. So we'll look at the record, the actual record itself. Miss Blanche Remus was the informant. Marie Karg, okay, right here, number 14. And Frank Remus being his father are mentioned here. Okay, and then there were, as I said, several newspaper articles that did spell her name Karg. I've saved a couple here. Let's see, we'll look at this one. This is the first part. And while that one's opening up, I'll get the second part here. Unless they're backwards there, we'll see. Yeah, Remus's sister appears before tribunal today, did not know anything was going to happen on morning of murder. Bulletin, Cincinnati, November 25th. And then it goes on to pass up the mental condition of George Remus on trial for the wife murder under a defense solely of, and here we go again, transitory insanity. He represented himself in the trial where he killed his wife, his second wife, Imogene. He chose to defend himself in the legal capacity, okay, as his own attorney. And he chose transitory insanity as his plea. So he was familiar with it already. He coined the phrase, so to speak. Thought that was kind of interesting. So anyway, the judge gets it, and we go down here. George Remus's sister, Mrs. Gabriel Ryerson of Plainwell, Michigan, was called to testify against him today in the trial for slaying his wife. Mrs. Ryerson was composed when she sat down, but very pale, and tears stood in her eyes. An hour and a half previously, she had been too hysterical to come into the courtroom. Since last May, she and her husband had been living at Remus's Price Hill mansion here, she testified. Remus was home the night of October 5th before he shot and killed Mrs. Remus in Eden Park the next morning, she said. Only her husband, who preceded her in the witness chair, was with Remus after he came home, she said. At breakfast the morning of the slaying, Mrs. Ryerson said the only conversation was when she greeted her brother and remarked about it being his big day. Well, this is your big day, I guess, she said to Remus. Yes, Anna, I suppose it is, Mrs. Ryerson testified that Remus replied. This was the day he was going into court for the finalization of his divorce. Oops, that's a cartoon. That's not what I wanted. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open this one because we're going to want that one too. So let's go back up here to his mother. I am pretty sure then I've saved page 2 on her because that's would have no, I don't think so. I think that is going to be the same thing. Yeah. Okay. Page 2. I saved it on the other sister. I knew I had it. Okay, there we go. And then continued from page 1. So Remus shot Mrs. Remus while she was en route to court to press a divorce suit. Walter K. Sibbald, assistant prosecutor, led Mrs. Ryerson through a narration of the arrival of George Klug, driver of the death car, and Remus' departure with him. You knew something was going to happen that morning, didn't you, Mrs. Ryerson asked Sibbald. The flood of tears and sobs Mrs. Ryerson had been suppressing let go. She dropped her head on the brass railing about the witness stand, and her shoulders heaved convulsively. No, I didn't. No, I didn't, she whispered between hot sobs. Her sister, Mrs. Elizabeth Dobretz, remember that's the name on the marriage license, who witnessed Imogene's marriage to George Remus. So she sat quietly in the back row of courtroom seats without her neighbors being aware of her identity, also burst into sobs. So that goes on with that newspaper clipping. And then we're going to go here to the 22nd, or page 22, I should say. This was February the 4th, 1927, in the Cincinnati Enquirer. The hearing in Remus' case ends. I should back up. When he murdered his wife, the reason he was really upset with her is that he had been arrested for bootlegging, and he had gone to the Atlanta penitentiary. He was just getting out when he killed her. While he was in the penitentiary, she had an affair with one of the revenue officers on his case. I believe it was Frank, was his first name maybe. Dodge was the last name. And together they managed to sell off all of George Remus's assets. Never did find out what they did with the money. And George catches wind of this is going on. So he files for divorce. And when he gets out, that's what's going on when I read those articles. And then, of course, he pleads insanity and he goes to the Lima, Ohio State Hospital because he's insane. So during the process of all this, they decide to consider deporting him, okay? And that's what this particular article is about. And this is the one that names his mother. It says, hearing in Remus case ends. So he's back out of, the murder's over, he's back from Lima, and now then they're going to consider sending him back to Germany. Hearing of the deportation proceedings brought against George Remus, Cincinnati, former bootleg king, now serving a year in Miami County Jail, was concluded yesterday before the United States Immigration Director Thomas, and a transcript will be forwarded to Washington for final action. The government already having presented its evidence, the hearing yesterday was taken up with the testimony of witnesses in support of Remus's claim to citizenship by virtue of his father's naturalization. Among these witnesses were his mother, Mrs. Marie Remus, 77 years old, her sister, her brothers, and there's George Carg's name, her daughter, and Remus's elder sister, Mrs. Elizabeth Dobretz of Chicago. So it goes on. They presented a copy of his father's naturalization paperwork and verified that what they said was true. And this is when the discrepancy in his age comes out, because apparently they had gotten a hold of his school records as well. And the fact that he was 19 when he became licensed as a pharmacist is revealed here. And the uncle says, well, I told him to do that. So that was kind of some interesting background there. So that you saw that the mother's, she is identified as Marie Remus, but you see her brother was there and they spelled his name Carg. If you want to look at that again, we'll come back here, right here, George Carg, K-A-R-G. So that was another source I used. If the newspaper can get it right, it's scary. So we will go back here. So I had to kind of dig around with that one a little bit, because as I said, her records for the United States did kind of have Cragg. If you go back to the ship's manifest, it does say, lists her father-in-law as Carg. And again, like I said, I am pretty sure that is not her father-in-law, but her father. It's records I've come across seem to indicate that that could be an error. So next one. What record did Remus set? And this is the one that you, just a simple Google search would have found. It was endurance swimming. And this is a pretty awesome record, I think. It's just kind of like weird. It's just out there. In 1907, Remus set an endurance swimming record in Lake Michigan, and I copied this verbatim. He remained in the water for 5 hours and 40 minutes in winter weather in Lake Michigan. I would think that's pretty cool. And this record stood for several decades before it was ever beaten. And then how many children did George's mother give birth to? 10 is the number, and that is on the 1900 census for her. So we'll go back to Mrs. Remus. That's the 1900, okay. There we go. You can look at the transcript, and it is down here. Mother, how many children? 10. Number of living children, 5. I will show you where it is here as well, because like I said, I prefer looking at these records. I don't know. This is the one that's not highlighted on. Yeah, there it is, down at the very bottom. Franz Remus, the head of the family, Marie A., wife. Here's your column up here. Well, let's see if we can get it to move. Come on. Well, next, this is the children living. The column to the left of it is the children born. So born 10, living 5. If we go back to my family chart here, I was able to find 7 children. I believe, as you can see, Herman died before the, well, he would still be alive in the 1900 census. Okay. But little Fred would have been dead by the 1900 census. I'm not sure. I think there was another one missing from that census. No, there's Anna. Okay, Anna, Frances, Marie, and then, yeah, these 2 were out on their own. Martha is the one that was missing on that census, and this is all I was able to find for her. I believe this hint is just a family tree. Yeah, so it's quite possible that I couldn't, other than the ship's manifest, I couldn't find anything that made her out to be a daughter, any proof of parentage there for her. So assuming that she is a child, she's probably has passed on by the 1900 census, she and Fred, and that would have left 5 children living, Lizzie, George, Anne, Frances, and Herman. So, and 2 children deceased that we know of by 1900 here in America. The others could have been that they were born in Germany even. I have no idea about that. She did marry Franz Remus in 1872, and Lizzie, the oldest child, is born in 1877. So it's certainly possible that some of those children passed away in Germany before the family ever immigrated. The next question, number 9. Remus married 3 times. What was his second wife's first husband's name? Albert Holmes, Albert Ward Holmes, specifically. I used a marriage record and the birth record for the daughter born to them, Ruth. So we'll go back here and we'll find Imogene Brown. And I thought this picture was rather pretty of her. I will show you what she looked like. There's her picture. And here she is, Albert. Dorothy is somebody I'm investigating, okay? I don't normally do this, but I have a lot of stuff in my shoebox. So I went ahead and put her in here. I ran across something that made me think that she belonged to them. And I really did make contact to get a death certificate for her to see who the parents are on it. But here we go. Here is, let's see, she married here. So here is the marriage index. I did not find a marriage record for them. And I can't remember if there was one on Family Search, but surely, usually if it's on Family Search, it's on Ancestry though. So she is listed, notice, as Gussie I. Brown. So Augusta, Gussie, later she's known as Imogene, but there she is with Albert W. Holmes. And then, let's see, Ruth's birth record. This one. Oh, that's hers. Of course, it would be the one I don't click on first. It's also an index record. Well, okay, let's go back here. Maybe easier to find it here. Okay, so birth certificates. Ruth was born on October 7th, 1907. Her mother is listed as Susan Imogene. Don't know where Susan came from. Again, this is a transcription. So if they could have gotten on the wrong line, there could have been a Susan before them or Susan somewhere else on the record. I would have no idea. but there's Albert Ward Holmes and the Imogene on her. And that was what I found there. Now then, question 10, we've kind of touched around this one a little bit. What was his connection to Elizabeth Dobretz? If you remember, George is the head of the household in her home. Was it 1910? No, that's not really. It may have been. Yeah, the 1930 census. And there they are at the top. She is listed as his housekeeper. He's practicing law, has his own office. They both forgive Germany. Can't remember if this one asked, yes, for their citizenship, both of them answered no, that they were not naturalized. And their year of entry into the United States is given as 1883. So you can kind of think, well, gee, they must have been traveling together. She's listed as relative, other relative, there, relative other. And these are her two sons. They're his nephews. And then her, this son, Frank's children are listed here as well. And as his children. So we've got her on the marriage record. We have her on the shipping, on the ship's manifest. We also have her here as an other relative. And when you look at the ship, we'll go back to that, the passenger and crew list. Ideally, we should be able to find birth records or christening records or something for both of them. Again, you're going to have to get those from a German record site because they both were born in Germany. So for our purposes, it's a little harder to do. So you kind of have to take what you got and go with it. Here she is. She's listed as Elise. And she used that name for a while, and then she becomes known as Elizabeth. So she kind of, it's not uncommon for immigrants to kind of Americanize their names. And that's kind of what happened there. But there she is. She's 7. She's 3 years older than he is. And she's listed as the daughter of Marie Remus. You may notice that their father is not on here at all. It's quite possible he came at a different time. So that's not uncommon either for one family member to come ahead and kind of pave the way, you know, find a place to live, get settled, and then send for the family. So, as I said, the ship's passenger list, census, birth and baptismal records in Germany would be good. Death records would be great because they would list both parents. I cannot find a death record for Elizabeth. She is in the 1930 census. That is the last census she appears in. She, I think she was in court in 27. She just kind of disappears. I believe she died between 1930 and 1940. I've checked the Illinois and the Cincinnati database, or the Ohio databases for death records, did not find one in Kentucky. At the time of her death, she had several children, and they were in the 1930s, would have been making their way toward California. The bulk of her children wound up there. Maria died in Chicago. Dorothy went to San Diego, and she first appears there in the 1940s. Fred registered for the World War II draft in California, but he came back and died in Campbell County, Kentucky. John, Adele, and Elroy are all buried in the same cemetery in Glendale, California. John seems to have been the first one to arrive there. And I believe that he is there in 1930. No, it must be 1940 census, but he had lived there in 1935, I think is what it is. Let's see. Yes, his residence, inferred residence in 1935, Glendale, Los Angeles. How much earlier than 1935 he arrived? I have no idea. So it's possible she went out there with him, that he went really right after the 1930 census, and that she went with him and died out there. California is the only place that I can see that she died that I have not checked. And she's not coming up in a search. So, but there he is listed with his wife and a son and a daughter. And I want to show you if I can find now where the question is. State seeking work, out of work. He was a salesman for oil leases, not an uncommon job in California at that time. I've seen quite a few people from this area go out there and do that type of work. Was really kind of surprised at the number. Could be a supplemental question. Okay, he's not on the supplemental questions. And sometimes while I'm here, I'll just point that out. Sometimes there are some supplemental questions at the bottom that just ask, like this one, it looks like it's targeting veterans. You know, were you a veteran and what branch? And some Social Security questions, it looks like as well. And those vary from census to census, what they ask. So I don't see it right off, but I'm looking at the gray here, his birthplace. His home was valued at $3,800, and it was not a farm. Well, anyway, it's somewhere on here. It's probably right in front of my face, and you all are probably seeing it going, look there, look there, look there. But it says inferred that he lived there in 1935. So, well, for the sake of time, we'll just move on. And then, of course, I've already covered the newspapers concerning his murder trial, and then, of course, the possible deportation. The last question, where did he live in 1910? It's 801 Windsor, Chicago, and that is really just about any census from probably like 1900 on, maybe even earlier, but at least every census they would appear in, you're going to find a section over here. To George. We'll just do this real quick here. Fingers on the wrong keys. Okay, 1910. And it's going to be in the very first column. You see the street name right here, Windsor Avenue. And it's kind of important to watch that because sometimes they'll change because they're moving from one street to another. So you want to make sure that, you know, you're looking at the right thing there. And here's the house number. That's not the same thing as the house visited. That was the 75th house they visited that probably that day or in that week or whatever they were working. And then their family number, but it was house 801. On the picture, that is 801 Windsor, Chicago today. I think, let's see. I think that's probably an office building or something today. Let's see if it gives it a value of the property. doesn't. So that's one of the years they didn't ask the value of the property, which might have given us a little bit of a hint. But to me, that looks like an office building or an apartment building or something. So my guess is that his home was probably torn down and something built there on the corner. But that's what's there today, according to Google Maps. Okay. So if you answered all those questions, you were able to escape from the warehouse. I hope that you found the key, and I hope that you picked up a few things that you didn't know about George Remus. And maybe even a few things that you didn't know about researching. Thank you for joining me today, and you have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Bye.